Welcome to Pure Intuitive Talk with me, Trish Smith. I'm a multi-dimensional channeler sharing my gift to assist others to connect and work with their whole being, helping bring them into a beautiful way of high-frequency living. Immerse yourself in an hour of nourishment that feeds your spiritual journey and invites you to embrace your empowered soul. You'll feel armed with new understandings for how to shift from pain to love as we explore topics from shamanic sound healing to gut health. Are you ready to take accountability for the impact that we have on the world around us and learn new tools and techniques to feel whole again? Of course you are, and you're in the right place. Pure Intuitive Talk starts now. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Pure Intuitive Talk. You're listening to Trish Smith, the host, and I'm here on Transformation Talk Radio. With me today, I have a very, very special guest and a good friend of mine, Amanda Albano.
Hello.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So she has an incredible story and she's an amazing woman. And you'll get to know that as the hour goes on because it's quite obvious when you just, spend time with her. So, but I wanted to start by asking you about your journey, where your journey began with autism and epilepsy.
Oh, well, the autism was first.
Oof, yeah. So if you don't mind telling us your story.
We noticed, when my son was probably, our diagnosis came when he was 2 years old. But prior to that, we had missed some major milestones with talking. He was doing some really repetitive movements and he lost a bunch of words too. He had talked before, but lost a bunch of words. And then by then, they give you go in, you do a bunch of tests and you wait and you get your diagnosis and there you are. They send you home, basically.
Yeah.
It's not reality for, I feel like, years to come, what is to come.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's your first child.
Yeah. So I had no idea. I had nieces and nephews who were typical and were happy babies, but Marius was not. He was a very unhappy baby. He cried all the time. He had weird soothing that other babies didn't. He would sit in the bathroom, would make him not cry. Vacuum cleaners made him not cry. We would just hang out with the vacuum cleaner running like it was normal behavior. But yeah, 2 is when everything kind of switched and we went down the road that they take you once you get your diagnosis.
And I would assume that up until those 2 years and you were starting to talk to doctors and start getting a diagnosis and whatnot, was there all of this stuff running through your mind? Like, well, what am I doing wrong? Is there that as a mother, because you're doing all the normal mom things, but your child's not responding to them?
No, it's like almost scary because you're waiting for all these milestones that are so big. Like talking, that's a huge, with no communication, there's nothing to base anything off of. So yeah, it was depressing. It was also, like I said, the reality of it was not what it was at that point. I think I even quoted Marius to being not that bad affected with autism, which now I'm like, okay, he's nonverbal.
Yeah.
With,
And today, Marius is 19 years old, correct? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, it's a long time.
Yeah, you're deep in it now. Yes. You're 17 years deep. You're a professional.
My husband said I'm an OG of autism. So, yes, we are 19 years in, but we still have the same hiccups that we can have when he was 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a mother, how old were you when you had Marius? If you don't mind me asking. We're giving away your age.
I think I was 28.
Okay, so you're 28 and you have a child and now you're learning he has autism.
Yes.
And you're working with that.
Yes.
And then you guys decide to have another child.
Yes. We were in the thick of Marius being Marius and he was 3 years old when we decided let's be crazy and do this again and see what normal is like. We were so excited to see normal. I know that sounds harsh, but we just wanted to have like the normal experience with life. And Miles came, he was a really good baby. We were like, this is amazing. This is it. And then around 4 months, I think is when it first started, he had some weird he would flop over in his chair. And I was like, that's not normal.
Mm.
But they were all like, oh, he's probably just going to sleep. And I'm like, no, this is not normal. And he, from 4 months on, he was diagnosed with epilepsy. And we've had seizures ever since.
Wow.
Our biggest gap was a month once we had done surgery to try to help prevent his seizures. And from the surgery date to he had like a whole month gap. That was his biggest gap.
And I remember you telling me that the procedure was them removing a part of his brain.
Yes.
And he's how old at this point?
3.
So as a mother, you're sending in your 3-year-old child to go have surgery to remove a part of his brain.
Yes.
I would imagine that terrifying doesn't quite describe that feeling.
No, it was kind of surreal.
Yeah.
And we had such big hopes. Like they told us that it could possibly not work, but we had such big hopes. We were like, this is going to be it. Knowing what I know now, I would have never do it again, nor would I suggest other people to do it, because I just think messing with your brain is a tricky thing.
It really is.
And it changes your dynamic as a person.
Yeah.
And he is a different person since that point.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it was weird. I remember going through the surgeries and one of us had to be home with Marius because he was so wild and crazy. So it was me at the hospital, my husband at home, and I was so worried about Marius at the same time. Like, oh my God, is he like freaking out? Is Joe going to be okay at home while Miles is like in the ICU? It was crazy time.
I genuinely can't imagine. I really cannot. I mean, I can imagine, but I can't imagine that round the clock, inescapable fear of, is my son going to be okay? And with a surgery like that, we all consider like, what if we lose him, right? I mean, that's just what goes through our minds, even though we know these surgeons have done this however many times. Doesn't matter. As a mother waiting for your son to have surgery on his brain, you're going to be afraid of losing him.
Oh, and they're casual. it's like a walk in the park for all the doctors. They're like, we'll see you later.
Yeah, you're like,
they sent us home like a week later, I remember, with his whole, it went from here to here and it was just open. And I'm like, we're not gonna like wrap it, put a helmet on him. They're like, no, it'll be fine. And he was fine. It was fine. Oh my goodness. It actually healed so fast. It was kind of amazing.
Wow.
What he went, I know, it is really wild.
So wild. And so Marius is now 16, right? I'm sorry. Yeah, Miles. Miles is now 16. Yeah. Marius is 19.
Yes. Miles is going to be 16.
Yeah, Miles is 16. And so for 16 years, you've been doing seizures.
Yes.
And you wake up to seizures.
In his sleep. He has them in his, surrounded by sleep, usually. We've had a few off over the years of like non-sleep where he'll just have one randomly. But yeah, we sleep weird. My husband sleeps in Miles's bed. I sleep with Miles, and that's just how it is.
Makes sense.
Right? I mean, yeah.
It's the right
We've tried to have him sleep alone and he'll get up, because it wakes him up and he'll have like a minute or two before it kicks in and he'll try to get up and then he falls and like will hurt himself. And I just don't sleep well anyways.
Yeah. So for 19 years, you've been under stress. Your body deals with that. As a mother, you're nervous most of the time because all you want is to know that your children are safe, but that requires constant supervision.
Yes. Which
leaves you with not much time. I mean, I know, so she has the raddest mom and the best sisters, and so she has an incredible support system.
Yes.
So you do get to sneak off for little breaks here and there.
Yes, I do. I have an amazing family that helps us.
Yeah, but not as you typically would with your children being this age.
No. Oh no, we have no freedom like a normal typical. I have a nephew who is the same age as my son, Miles, and they stay home. My sister, they go to eat, they go out to dinner, they go to the grocery store together, and it's not even a factor. When they leave their house, they don't have to think about it because their kids will be fine. We can't leave our kids home alone.
Right. And I don't know that people understand that. I don't know that the general public, when they are out and they see a mother and their child or children have autism or other special needs like cerebral palsy, just different ones, even kids with ADHD and being emotionally disturbed and other neurodivergent diagnoses, right? So the daily though, the round the clock,
right.
that's a lot for our body to endure.
Yes.
Like your body to be under that stress level around the clock of being constant supervision is a lot of stress for you, and you manage it really beautifully because you're so invested as a mother. And what I was explaining to Amanda earlier, my background is in early childhood education, and I've worked in special day class for several years. And so I've witnessed the parenting styles of hundreds of families over the years. And when I've witnessed parents, even of typical children, that are not invested and are not giving the attention that the children need, those children suffer, right? And then when you add special needs into that equation, I've witnessed the children suffer just, 10 to a million times more.
Oh, yeah.
And so I love you. I love your story. I love how much you just adore your children. And you're like, yes, it would be nice to have some normalcy, but I wouldn't ever walk away from what I'm doing. I'm 200% invested, and there'll never be anything but.
Yes. It sucks sometimes, let's be honest.
Yeah. And
I
that's
want to walk away sometimes. I'm
Yeah.
like, let's go.
And that's what part of this show is about, is when we go into our next segment, is leading into how difficult it really can be at times,
Right.
and what that looks like. And so there's a few subjects that we want to touch on, but I did want you to introduce yourself to the audience and let them know who you are and how you got here and what your daily life is like. So thank you for being on here. We have a couple of more minutes and we'll be going to break. When we get back, we'll be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly, because there are parts of it that are so difficult. There are parts about being a mother with children with special needs that can potentially be dangerous for a parent or for the child. And it's just no joke. It's a lot, and it's important. It's important work. And so I would also like to offer some praise for all of the people that have children with special needs, and also all of the people that work with children with special needs. All of my friends, all of those years working with the school district, honestly, like I've never known neater people. Like I've never known bigger hearted, more honest, gracious human beings in my life. So I think that's part of a blessing in working with kids with special needs and having kids with special needs, is that you really meet the cream of the crop in the human being department, right?
You do, definitely.
So
you have to have a certain type of person that's willing to do that job.
Yeah. So there's some silver lining right there. And like, with most things in life, right, it's like there's that double-edged sword. So there's the gifts in it, and then there's the challenges in it. So stay tuned. Thank you for being here. We'll see you when we get back for a break. You are listening to Pure Intuitive Talk. I am your host, Trish Smith, and currently I am on Transformation Talk Radio. Thank you so much. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Pure Intuitive Talk. I'm your host, Trish Smith, and with me today is a very, very special guest and friend of mine, Amanda Albano.
Hello.
And we were just discussing, before we went to break, her life story. Well, not her entire life story, but her life story as a mother, and where that began for her with her journey with autism and epilepsy. And I know most of you listening at home maybe really can't quite imagine what that's like on the day-to-day. And there are many of you out there, though, that can. And so I appreciate your transparency, your openness in what we're going to be discussing over this next segment, with the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? The really challenging, difficult parts of being the mother, right? Having to advocate, the behaviors, all of that fun stuff. And so we wanted to come here and present your story, just to remind people that are going through similar situations that you're not alone, right? You really are not. There's other resources out there, and you can band together. I know you've got a great support group.
I do.
And then for those people that don't have children with special needs, or not involved with children or adults with special needs, just that inside look, right? And to remind us to have compassion for people, and also that we don't know what other people are going through. And I've mentioned that in many other shows, but like if I ran into you in the grocery store, right? If this lady is checking out in front of me and she's like, "Hi, have a nice day." You have no idea, right? And so just the reminder of when you're out in public, you don't know if you ran into Amanda at the grocery store and she was helping her son through his seizure at 4 o'clock in the morning, but she still needed to go to the store and get the damn bread. And so here she is, right? You know, so I also like to throw out that reminder of always be kind to the people around you when you're out in public, because you genuinely don't know what their life is like. And Amanda's here today giving us the inside look at what her life is like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Amanda, when we were talking the other day, I loved you were talking about having the least amount of resources and feeling the most judged. And can you just speak on that?
Yeah, because I had talked about the kind of pretty side of disability, I want to say. And no, I'm not saying that any disability is a great thing to have, but there's more accepted than others. So when my children come along, they have their disabilities that also come with a lot of pretty aggressive behaviors at times, which are scary. They look scary. They are scary at the time, but I mean, I don't know. It's difficult because you never know. I know that other people struggle in different ways. Everybody can struggle in their own way, but there are least amount of resources when it comes to a child who is struggling, when it comes to school, when it comes to childcare, because a lot of people just don't know how to respond.
Right.
They don't know how to deal with a child that's trying to bite them, scratch them, pull their hair. And it's not their child. So I, as a mother, have to be afraid that they're not going to be able to respond appropriately. And it might make them snap when my man child is coming at them.
Yeah.
Usually, it doesn't usually go that way with my oldest son. When he has bad behaviors, it's usually directed at one of my husband or myself. But my younger son, he has problems with impulse control, and it can go with anybody out in public. He says things because he has no filter. And so people get really mean, and because he looks typical, he comes off as a young man that's maybe just being a smart ass, and they get really offended, which then makes me, as his mother, I'm like, what is wrong with you? I'm going to have to beat you up now because you're being crazy to my disabled child, which you don't even know he's disabled.
Fair.
So it's all a mess. It just really, people need to stop, take a breath, and be like, okay, what's going on with that kid?
Right.
Why is he saying F you to me and he doesn't know me at all?
Out of nowhere.
Right. Like, why is that happening?
And I think that's going to need to be, in my opinion, something that we really start educating the public on. Right. And I know too that like in, police, sheriff, officers, like they're starting to become trained in being able to recognize behaviors in, people with special needs, but, people with autism also, because of just those types of situations, right? Where it's like, okay, well, hold on. Like you said, stop, take a breath, reevaluate, and go, what's really going on here? And then our job as a society is to protect the people that are living with these conditions.
Right.
So we need to do exactly what you just said, is stop, take that breath, reevaluate, and go, oh, wait a minute, something's going on here. Right. And then not take it personally, not respond to that behavior negatively. If you find someone that's, expliciting those behaviors and they're by themselves, like find help for them.
Don't just film them,
or
film a mom getting beat up at the grocery store, or film a kid that's throwing a temper tantrum on the floor, because you don't know.
Right.
You have no idea if that mom is on her last leg and had to go to the store and get eggs, and her child can't handle Walmart because the lights are crazy and the sounds are crazy. And so they're just trying to make it to the store, and you are laughing and staring and thinking that their child's being horrible. So I get that it goes both ways, that like a stranger doesn't want to be kicked by my child. I get that. People don't want to be verbally assaulted, but he doesn't necessarily have the brain to stop, think. We're working on it. That's why we say we're working on it, people. We're working on it. Give us some time here.
Well, and the possibility of, at 19 years old and you're working on some of these behaviors, I mean, the possibility of those behaviors still being present at the age of 30 is possible. And
it's scary.
And so at the same time, where it's like we want the public to be able to go, hey, don't start abusing these people. We also need to be able to protect our people. And so, like you said, you're like, I'm gonna have to beat up a complete stranger.
Right. Because it puts us in these awkward positions. Yeah. So where we're in defense mode for our child that we know looks like a lunatic right now. I know that he looks crazy to you guys. I'm with you on that. Usually I'm like, okay, this is crazy.
Right.
But then I have to be the calm, because otherwise my child will get even crazier.
Yeah.
Like, this is no big deal that he's pulling my hair out of my head. Let's just keep it moving, people, and act like nothing's happening.
And that's the truth of it. Because if you
get engage, more,
the behavior gets worse and worse. So like the only thing that we can do is to remain calm.
Let's be happy.
And then provide ways that help calm their system and their nervous system to help them calm down. So yeah, as soon as you start engaging and creating that behavior to become worse and worse, because the thing about a person with autism, if they are starting to go into fight or flight, right? And their behavior starts acting up and they start kicking, screaming, scratching, biting, okay? What's going to happen if you start going back at them, they will only get worse, right? So our job is to then help their nervous system calm down. So we have to be the calm in the storm. It's not an option. We have to be the calm in the storm, and we have to be capable of helping our fellow human being, their nervous system calm back down so that they're no longer in fight or flight.
Right. Absolutely. And sometimes I don't want to be that person.
Yeah. Well, around the clock, right? For 19
I'm
years.
like, I don't want to tell you to calm down. I just want to tell you to stop it and shut up and sit down.
Yeah.
And we're not doing this right now, but I know what's to come if that was to really come out of my mouth.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I'm like, okay.
There's nothing you can do. Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay.
Let's just keep those hands safe, but you're really like, oh.
Like, I'm going to sing you a song and I'm going to hum to you and I'm going to rock you, but I kind of want to like just choke you a little bit.
We touched out it was more acceptable for younger kids too, as opposed to when your children become man children. I call my son a man child because he is a man and he is a child.
Yeah.
All in one package.
Yeah.
And he has a beard now and it looks like a grown man is attacking his mom sometime.
Yeah. And that being said, that happens, right? There are times where, and when I was working with Special Day, I was working in an elementary school. So the children were small.
Yes.
I wasn't working with children that were twice my size. Your son, like you said, how tall is he now? He's like, what, 5'10"?
Yeah,
11?
he's huge. He's a huge Hulk.
He's like,
and as you know, even with the elementary kids, once they get into that fight or flight, they become Incredible Hulk.
They do.
It doesn't matter what you are trained in. It's all out the window because they are like MMA experts.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to survive, right?
And you may not be able to tell by looking at Amanda and I, but Amanda is not super tall, right?
No.
So now your son is really tall.
Yes.
And he's gone into fight or flight and he's getting scrappy. And you're, not half his size, but you're a small woman.
Yeah.
And you've got this large man physically attacking you because in his mind, he has completely lost control. He's terrified. He's freaking out. He doesn't know what to do. And so the arms are going and the legs are going because he has just entirely lost control over his behavior.
It is. Yeah. So, it's like a blackout. I always say it's kind of like scary eyes because he loses touch.
Yeah.
Because everybody's like, oh, just snap. He can snap out and he can't. It takes time.
No.
It takes weird blowing his nose, getting him drinks of water, doing breaths. And I mean, it can flare up in between those times like a wave, still the behaviors.
And each child has those different soothing techniques too. But I also, we're going to go to break in a few minutes. I also wanted to touch on how it can be lonely, feeling misunderstood, right?
Yes.
And not living a typical life.
No, we're not typical at all. We lost a lot of people along the way just because our life is so hectic and it's weird and we can't take our kids everywhere. I can't bring my kids to my friends' houses that I don't know their houses, my kids would go crazy.
Yeah.
And then to get them back out of your house is a whole nother ordeal. And it's like, to me, it's not worth it. I'm like, okay, just come to my house where I know they're locked in. Everything is good to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like for you, like keeping the boys safe all the time, I mean, that's a full-time job along with the other full-time job, you know what I mean? Of keeping them fed and keeping them happy and keeping them from fighting with each other.
Because they don't make food. Yeah. They're not cooking their snacks. They're not doing, I mean, there's a lot, don't get me wrong, there's a lot more that my children could probably do. They're a little spoiled. But they have to have help showering. They have to have help toiletry. It's just a whole cycle.
So you have 16 full-time jobs.
Yes.
That are 24 hours a day.
Yes. And luckily I have a really amazing husband and I have amazing family and I have amazing friends who have disabled children as well. So they get the struggle of it all. Because I surround myself with strange people that get my strange life.
Thank God for them.
Right? I
Thank
know.
God for each other. Well, we're going to go to a break now. When we get back, we're going to be talking about the rise in autism rates and what that looks like in the future and ways that we believe will be helpful to others looking down that path. So thank you for being here. You're listening to Pure Intuitive Talk. I'm your host, Trish Smith. I've got my friend Amanda Albano with me here today, and we'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Pure Intuitive Talk. I'm your host, Trish Smith, and with me today, I have a special guest and friend, Amanda Albano, and we are talking about autism and her life with autism and epilepsy.
Yes.
And what that looks like on the day-to-day and some of the challenges she faces, as well as some of the gold that's in it, right? Some of the blessings and
yes.
And just wanting to actually just kind of provide some insight for people that are listening, whether you have children with special needs, and it's just nice to know that there's other people out there and you can relate, or if you're somebody who has no idea what it's like to live a life in the day of Amanda's shoes, and just being able to have that insight and a window into what that looks like, because right now, we are at 1 in 40 children with autism in America.
That's crazy.
And about 15 years ago, it was 1 in 160. So over the last 15 years, we've gone from 1 in 160 children with autism to 1 in 40 people with autism. And so
that's scary.
If we do the math, right, the trajectory of 15 years down the road from now, are we looking at 1 in 3 people with autism? Are we looking at 1 in 2, 1 in 4, 1 in 5? And what is that going to look like? So a conversation that Amanda and I have had is children, or not children. I'm a grandma, so when I say children, I'm thinking of people that are like in their 20s. But anyways, younger people, I'm like kids, you know. Anyways, so young people looking to have children, we want them to really consider the fact that 1 in 40 children have autism, right? So when you're going to create your family, we believe that it's important to look at that, prepare yourself, and wrap your head around the idea of the possibility of your child being the 1 in 40. And as that number increases, maybe it'll be your child will be the 1 in 20, your child will be the 1 in 10, right? And saying yes to that.
Right. And being prepared.
Yeah. And saying yes, like this is what can go, right? And that's just with autism, right? That doesn't include all of the other special needs that, you know, we have mental illness in our family. We have bipolar in our family. My mom's stepdad suffered from schizophrenia, right? So there's plenty of other, my brother's emotionally disturbed. I mean, just so many other conditions that people live with, right? And as a parent, it's important to know that when we decide to have children, what we're signing ourselves up for.
Absolutely.
And with autism, that comes with a better set of tools nowadays than you had 19 years ago.
Definitely.
But even so, there's a lot of challenges.
Yes. I mean, you wouldn't have known, you don't talk about that back then. They don't talk about autism back when I had Marius diagnosed. I think, I mean, I didn't know it. I'm just gonna say the classic, like Rain Man was my experience.
Okay, yeah.
So the movie, I didn't
Yeah.
know anything about it. Because when you get pregnant, you have tests, and the major test that they can kind of distinguish something would be Down syndrome.
Right.
And so you can, and I personally, on my own personal, I didn't get that test because I don't want to know.
Yeah.
It was what it was going to be. So I look at that the same with autism. I guess if I had an autism test, I probably wouldn't have taken it either, but we didn't know.
Yeah.
The lifetime. It's a lifetime commitment. And to me, kids are anyways.
Yeah.
That's how we talk about how kids are your kids forever, even if they're 40 years old. Yeah. They could move in my house. But autism's a whole nother level. You are dealing with caring for them, their future when you're not here anymore, which is super scary for us. That's like one of my biggest anxieties is dying. Yeah. And what's to come with my children. Because I don't have a typical sibling that I can be like, hey, look, I want you to live your life, but go watch out for your brothers. I have nieces and nephews, but that's not their responsibility. That I had disabled kids and they have to watch them, but it's a scary, scary world. And it just kind of keeps getting scarier.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the truth of it. And I have an old friend, her brother was with autism. He passed away a few years ago and he lived with her. I remember I met her 20 years ago, one of my favorite people on the planet. And her brother was so neat and I really always enjoyed him. And but he lived with her forever. She had her brother living with her, and he had autism, and they had the coolest, most beautiful relationship. I loved watching them together. I know we were all devastated when he passed, and but like you're saying, and I have friends that have children with special needs that have the same fears. Like what happens to my child if something happens to me?
Absolutely. That's one of my major fears. And the fact that like there's no guarantees, even if I chose somewhere and was like, okay, had it all lined out, there's no guarantees in life of what's going to happen then. So it's kind of like get them as prepared as you can.
And I don't know what that looks like for parents that don't have the support system you have, right?
Right.
So currently, if something happened to you tomorrow, knocking on wood, you've got your mother, you've got your sisters, your husband. But when you're older, maybe you and your husband go, right? And your mom is probably passed because she's older than you, right? So, maybe 20 years down the road or so, like you said, he doesn't have a typical sibling that he can live with, right?
No.
And you still have that support system, right? Maybe your sisters will take over and help the kids, right? But what about people that don't have that support system, right?
Right.
And what happens? And are those resources available for so many, right? If the autism rate keeps increasing to where we have 1 in 5 people with autism, where are those resources going to come from to care for our people, right?
Absolutely.
And you and I have talked about that's one of the reasons why I take my health as seriously as I do. And sometimes I struggle with my health. My iron levels were so low and I had no idea. But it's important to me to take care of myself so that I'm able to take care of my loved ones. And I want to kind of encourage everybody listening to do the same, because I believe that our future is going to look like us banding together to care for our loved ones with autism and other special needs.
Absolutely.
So, and I've personally never been neurotypical.
We were just talking about how we don't feel like a lot of people are neurotypical.
Yeah, I know. Who are these neurotypical
What
people?
is neurotypical nowadays?
And so for myself, even my ADHD was, they told my mom it was double the charts, and I got in a lot of trouble in school and whatnot. And so I know I was difficult for my mom to raise. I know that, but I was able to go out into the world and make my way as an adult. I mean, I'm using that term loosely,
right?
But I've been self-sufficient, and so for parents with children with other neurodivergent abilities, that's not always the case.
No.
And so are you going to financially be able to support your children through adulthood?
And what does adulthood look like for them?
Mm-hmm.
It's such a huge spectrum that some kids don't need as much help. Some kids need round the clock care. So it's like, and then I feel like sometimes, do our kids want to live with us?
Well, and that's exactly what I was just thinking, like the child's perspective, right?
Right.
So, I mean, let's not ever forget that a person with autism is a person,
Right. And has
right?
an opinion.
A person with ADHD is a person. A person with cerebral palsy is a person. A person with schizophrenia is a person, right?
Absolutely.
So we are a being living in this vessel, and some of us have different wiring, right? Some of us have these neural pathways that have been interrupted, and our brain doesn't work quite the same way as a typical brain would. And so there's feelings involved there. There's feelings, there's emotions. And when you're living with autism and the world around you is hard to navigate because the way your brain is wired, and you're simply trying to get through a day to day. I mean, imagine that, right? Imagine even as a typical, right? You're trying to get through your day. It's stressful enough.
Right.
Now add the weight of not understanding how the typical world functions and how to be a part of that.
Yes.
And so that can become lonely.
And then you're waiting to be, I mean, I feel like our kiddos know that there's, especially like my kiddos have been exposed to their cousins who are very typical, and they know that there's more out there than hanging out with their mom and dad.
I mean, you guys are cool, but yeah.
We're not that cool. I mean, at 19, I didn't think my mom and dad were that cool.
Yeah.
I mean, they are now, but I'm like, wow, do you really want to be with me all the time? I don't think so.
And so I just want us to remember, like, everybody's role. I just want us to remember that it's our duty, I believe, as a parent, when we bring a child into the world, to consider the kind of care that they're going to need if they have special needs.
Yes.
And just prepare yourselves to be that parent if you're looking to have children at this time in history.
Do research.
Yeah,
Do
that's
some
a
research.
great idea.
Yeah,
do some research, read up, like, and understand your role as a parent. And worst case scenario, you've done all this research and you really have your mind wrapped around what it's like to parent a child with autism, right? And then you have children, and then they're typical children. The only thing that happened is now you've gained an education and you've gained an understanding, and now you could just quite possibly be helping your friends and family with their loved ones with special needs.
Or making your children more understanding and accepted in the world as my kids want to be accepted into their world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's huge. Kids need to learn to accept each other for their flaws.
Yeah.
And it looks messy sometimes, but we all grow up to be adults together in the big picture of things.
Yeah. I was talking to Aaron about that the other day. I'm like, these kids, I'm like, why are we not? Because I know nowadays they'll take all of the class out, right? So it's like, oh, we've got the student and they have these behaviors, but why are we not educating the rest of the children on what our friend is living with, right? Like what our friend is going through, instead of saying like, okay, struggles. 25 students, you guys go over there. We're going to deal with one student who's having behaviors right now. Right. So those children have got to be educated instead of looking on and wondering, because my experience of working with children, and I've worked with thousands of children over the last 30 years, is that when you help them understand something, when you explain something to them, you teach them, you educate them on it, they understand.
They're very compassionate.
They're way better than adults.
Way better.
So why are we not doing that? Why are we not educating all of the children on what our friend is living with, right? And then help them have more compassion and understanding, and then they can grow up with that. So so if you're writing the curriculum for the school districts, go ahead and write that down.
Let's have a seminar about that.
Well, we've got to go to a break again, and when we get back, we're going to be talking about a rad idea that you've been talking about, is family communities. And I love that. You're so brilliant. I love it. So we'll be back in just a minute. Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to Pure Intuitive Talk. I'm your host, Trish Smith, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Pure Intuitive Talk. I'm your host, Trish Smith. And with me today, I have my special guest and friend, Amanda Albano. And lucky her 24 hours a day is making sure her kids are safe. I mean, it doesn't sound like not typical, but when your children are 19 and 16 and you're worried about their health and their safety around the clock, that could be daunting.
It's a little much.
But you have an amazing support system.
I do.
And
I've met an amazing support system over the years.
Yes.
Yes, it's been amazing. So we were talking about having no resources as an adult for my son, and like, where do you go? What do you do housing wise? I don't know, I kind of took over. But we were talking about how we don't have resources. We don't. And like, what happens when we're not here, or just being empty nesters alone. Like, sometimes I see people that don't live with their kids and I'm like, wow, I want to do that. I want to go to like the grocery store with you and not have to worry about what our kids are doing at this moment when they're adults. But there's not a resource out there. There's group homes that are kind of scary because it's similar to like a foster home scenario. But we had a behavior consultant for years that helped us with Marius. She helped completely turn our world around with him. And she has a disabled son as well, who's an adult, and he needed the same type of care. And so she built a community based off of people with disabilities to live there, and their workers can live there as well. And they are all customized to the person that is buying or renting into the facility. And there's a chef on site. They go on activities, or they're a community amongst themselves. It actually is amazing. It's kind of like emotional to see all the people that live there come together and just be like a little safe group right out of Clackamas. And they're all, I think she has a few all over now, but she started it with an idea and she made it come to life, and it gives people resources to maybe live on one side of the building and that your child lives on the other side, to where you're still there, but you're both kind of learning to live separately and learning to live in two different worlds as they mature. Because I do, like we said, do they want to live with us? We don't know. I don't think that
we don't want to assume that they just love us being around us 24 hours a day.
I would think that maybe he wants some free, and this can take away that stress of not having things worked out for parents and kids. Like, you need to know what's to happen.
So we had the privilege, my husband and I had the privilege of going to the location in Clackamas that Anne had built. And my husband and I showed up as Mr. and Mrs. Claus, and we did photos. And honestly, I was so taken back by, and I'll probably cry. I'll try not to cry, you guys. I think I cry in almost every episode. But I was so taken back at the love that had been invested in every single detail. I mean, the room that we were in that had the kitchen and the TV, and it had a climbing wall, and like the attention to detail was so beautiful. And then, just as Amanda was describing, so the people that are living there, right, are adults with disabilities. They each have their own little, basically tiny home.
Yes.
And they weren't even that tiny.
No, not
They
at
were
all.
pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
And each person, so we were fortunate enough to be given tours by a couple of the people that lived there. And it is so cool. I mean, honestly, like, I wanted to move in. I'm like, I want my own place here. So they were able to decorate the place in their theme, and helped them to get that started. So like the overall decorations were, maybe the trains and, or the Hello Kitty, and it's just so incredibly beautiful. I was so inspired by her and what she's created. And so I wanted Amanda to offer the website, because she does take donation and she does do fundraising to help support these families.
Yes.
So do you mind sharing?
It is nextstepstrategies.org. And it really is an amazing organization. Even if your kid isn't in the community. They have a agency as well that's connected to their, and they just do so many outings and so many activities for the adults that, oh my God. Like I want to move there.
Yeah, me too.
I'm ready.
It's unfortunate that Anne requires paperwork
Right.
that you know, are having other
I wish that
neurodivergent abilities, you know,
I
than the ones I
wish.
have, because I want to move in.
I do too. I'm like, it's so relaxing, and it's really a safe environment, which makes all the world of difference for a parent to know. And most of these people are so happy. Like they truly are happy in their community.
And something that I wanted to offer to our audience is going to Anne's website, right, and checking it out. And if you have money to donate, that would be amazing. If you feel like it's on your heart to give to her cause, that would be wonderful. But also check out her website, check out what she's built, because what you were explaining too when we were talking last was that is an excellent model for us to use to create these communities for families, right? And so as the autism rate increases, and we're going to need more and more communities that have been built in this fashion, maybe go to their website. Maybe if you're looking at investing in creating something similar, or maybe you can work with Anne and create another community in your location and she can work with you there.
Absolutely.
I mean, but what an amazing, beautiful woman. Holy moly, the community was,
it was amazing. It's amazing. It makes me happy every time I go there. I'm like, I want to be a part of this community.
Yeah. I mean, just mind blowing, the care,
yes,
love that's been put in there, and you can just feel it. And so thank you if you want to go ahead and donate to them. And what was the website again? nextstepstrategies.org. nextstepstrategies.org. And again, like I said, maybe even check it out and look at that model, and maybe in your community, you're able to find people to help create a community similar, right? Or
like we had talked about, like an elderly community with disabled adults together, because there's going to be so many more as it goes on.
Yeah.
And
I think that's the thing, as time goes on and as the autism rates increase, your idea is it's obtainable, right? And it's incredible, and you've seen it done, you know it works, and why not take that model? I know it's crazy in America. We don't really take the models that work and then copy them. We just try to come up with something that doesn't work instead. But what we're suggesting here is using a model that's working really well, and simply, cut, copy, paste, or whatever, you know what I mean? And creating those kinds of communities in the area that you live, so that your child with special needs can have that kind of an opportunity. Or, one day, maybe your family needs those kinds of resources and you know where to grab them, right? Because her website offers so many of those resources.
Yes, absolutely.
So we just have a couple of minutes. Is there anything else that you would like to say before we go?
I want to touch on, if you are an autism parent, some advice. Mine was to think, even if you're in the thick of it as a young child, your child's young, you're battling autism, address those issues. Battle through them when they're young, because they are still there as they become adults. They don't magically disappear over time. They don't outgrow them usually. Some do, but it usually doesn't work that way. They just get bigger and the problems get bigger. So definitely address it as you go, and you're not alone. There's lots of people out there to help.
That's excellent advice.
Yeah, you just got to find them.
Yeah. So thank you for being here. We've come to the end of our show. I mean, honestly, I think we could talk about this for 20 more hours. And it's something that's really important to my heart. Protecting our families, whether they're children with special needs or adults with special needs. The title was recreated just because of that reason. Special needs. They have needs that are different than a typical person, and they need special attention. Okay. So that being said, remember when you're out in the world and you're spending time with people that have different needs than you have, to have compassion for it and to be able to see each other, because we're just all human beings.
Yes.
So, taking the time to look at each other and understand that we're all here living together, just like you said.
Yes.
One day we're all going to be adults living together. So separating the kids, it's like, it doesn't necessarily make sense, right?
No.
And I understand some of it's for financial reasons for
Right.
the school districts.
Yes,
I get it. I
we
really
get it.
do. But at the same time, like, let's just remember to love on each other.
Right.
So, whether or not we're neurodivergent or typical.
Absolutely. Everybody love everybody.
I know. I'm like, I got in a lot of trouble growing up. I wish someone was like, she just has ADHD. We know she's been climbing the walls all day, but can you just love her?
No big deal.
Stop sending her,
Right.
Stop sending her to the corner. Stop putting her to timeout. All the time out. Oh my God. I want to get started.
You were a marked shirt.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Thank you for
having me.
And again, go check out the website. Please donate to Anne's cause. She is incredible. If you haven't met her in person, just take our word for it.
Yes.
Thank you for tuning in. This is Pure Intuitive Talk. I'm your host, Trish Smith, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you for listening to Pure Intuitive Talk with me, Trish Smith, your Pure Intuitive Guide. Come back and join us for encouragement to take responsibility and to connect to your whole being. Remember that every moment is the right moment to choose peace, acceptance, and forgiveness. We all have the courage to look deep within, get real with ourselves, and make upgrades to our ways of interacting with the world. It's been my privilege to share this hour with you. For more information about me, go to pureintuitiveguide.com. That's pureintuitiveguide.com. Thanks again, and we will see you here next time on Transformation Talk Radio.